Mm, well, I don't even know what to say really right off the bat. It's 10:08. Greg knows we were going live. I don't know if he got our signals crossed or what have you, but it's very strange. I'm not getting any phone answers or really anything. So I don't know what to say. I'm still waiting to see if he's going to contact me and let me know he's ready, but I don't really know what the heck is going on. I do have a Pete test with Pete, Spaff pilot today, so I'll have him on this week. The Marine Scout Sniper, Ed Kugler, great book. I'll speak to him tomorrow afternoon for us to schedule a talk. Then we've got two shows tomorrow. We've got Andy doing his PRU work, and then we've got our first later era CCN recon man who actually knew John Caviani, Ralph Morgan, RT Rhode Island, great guy. He's got a lot of good stories. I've got a lot of good photos of him. He'll be a night show, so maybe the people that won't catch Andy can catch us at the night show. And then Pete, we're gonna end up doing Pete around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock on Thursday, and we will have another CCN man, but he is a CCN Hatchet Force man, John Bartlett, which I think is going to be very cool because he ran exclusively with CCN Hatchet Forces and actually ran a lot of missions with recon men who came in after the Sapper attack to get experience and then were moved on to recon teams. So I think we're going to get a lot of interesting stuff. And I've got a lot of Marines still lined up. I've just got to test with them and line them up. And Rick Prado, the CIA guy. I've got the Navy SEAL Ben Milligan, who is still going to come on. I'm testing with Lou DeSada this week, Kason FOB2 vet. And let me check right here because I've already got some. Terry's here. He's about to jump on with us. Let me see what we've got. We've got Pete Thursday. We've got Lou coming up. We've got John Bartlett from CCN. If Greg ever gets up with me, Greg. We've got the PRU show, and we've got Rick Rabbi Rabinold coming on. And Don Fulton came on, so now he'll want to come on with Terry. Terry's jumping on with us now.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on with Greg. Spoke to him yesterday, and everything was good to go. Had our times fixed up. He's an hour ahead of me, so we've had it fully fixed up and ready to go. And can't get him on Facebook, can't get him on text, can't get him on anything.
You got to remember, and I've told you this before, when you get to be our age, sometimes the mind don't work right. He may not have had enough coffee this morning. Who knows?
Yeah, I know he's not blowing me off or whatever. I'm sure something came up or he may have forgotten, like you said. But we've got a lot of interesting shows coming up. I was really wanting him to be on because this week is really we've had a few guys that have never come on or spoken publicly, and Greg was one of them, and he's got a hell of a experience, with Hatchet Forces with you, and then recon, and then the crazy Covey shit he did. Did you get to see Don's interview yet?
I did, and I can't wait to do the one with him.
Okay, he just messaged me.
Stories.
He just messaged me, and let me save that. That was a text from our SOG man. He messaged me and was wanting to know who Terry was, and I sent him some of the videos from on here. But he, for some reason, I always thought he was in my SOG group, and he never answered the invite. So finally, he's in it now,
Okay.
and I've pointed him to post that you're on and all of that. So hopefully he'll figure out who the hell you are here soon. I'm sure he probably already knows you.
Just another old guy.
Yeah, he's very excited to do both the hatchet force and get recon men on. But I think it'd be good to have y'all on first off, because I'm trying to link him up with some of his guys, some of the men that he actually saved, Ed and them. That would be good. But just for overall coverage of stuff, I think y'all two would be really, really fucking great.
Well, just to plug it a little bit, I'm going to go into Russian helicopters and MiGs because
he had experiences with MiGs. They chased him off, but I won't go into any further. But he has experience.
It's not all in my imagination.
No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, somebody who we just had on the Army pilot helping the Marines, he was flying DMZ mission and tally ho missions, and he was seeing MiGs regularly.
Well, up there I would expect it, but down where we were at,
oh yeah, that's even worse. But the crazy thing he was mentioning was, hey guys, all of y'all, we got an Irishman in here watching with us. The crazy thing he was mentioning was, clearly they were coming and they could have annihilated him because he's in a damn bird dog, for Christ's sakes. But he seems like they just come up and they'd get so close they could see each other and tip the hat. And as long as he crossed the border and got the hell out of there, they weren't going to try and shoot or mess with him. And they just turned right back around and head on off.
The pilot on the chopper I was on, when the MiG came up alongside and he tipped his hat, the pilot said that was common, and all he was doing was showing a sign of respect. And he took off.
That's everyone I've heard. As a matter of fact, it's been a tip of a hat or a salute or something like that. Yeah, just to let you know, I respect what you're doing, but if we got to get into it, we'll get into it.
How many guys we got on right now?
Considering everybody's waiting on the other one to come on, we've only got about 9 or so in here right now, but I'm sure people, once they see this is live and you're on here with me, they'll start coming on. But damn, I was not expecting Greg to shit the bed this morning like that.
Well, it is what it is. Can I make a shameless shout out to some guys?
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
So 2 Fridays ago, and you and Jason know about it, I was out running the streets with my buddy, the Colonel, and he kept making hints about he'd never been to this Army surplus store that's down the road. So coming back from a road trip, I just pulled in the surplus store and we go in there, and I was looking for a new hat. My Purple Heart hat I'm going to have to wash it before I go to Fort Campbell next week. And there was a different material one that I'd had before, and I wanted to see if they had one. And they had all the hats taken off the racks, and they were getting ready to redo them. And this young guy comes up to me and he says, "Were you in SOG?" And I'm looking at him, and my buddy starts grinning. And I said, yeah. And he yells to his buddy, and he said, "This is the guy that you're always talking about." And they said, "We're on Jason Holmes' Twitter deal." And he says, "We've watched all your videos on YouTube." And I'm like, holy shit. And then they wanted to do pictures. So I want to do a shout out to the guys at Burns Army Surplus. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to Jason. And there's plenty more to come.
Oh, absolutely. And I was about to say, considering we've got another, that the man I mentioned, Pete Johnston, was another SPAF pilot, but he flew Covey missions and shit as well. And he'll be on. So if I can speak to him, I'm going to try and get as many pilots on here with y'all to talk about.
Cool.
I'm going to get as many as possible. And I know Don's already on board. I know once Frank Doherty's book comes out, he was at Contoom as well.
Yeah.
He'll be open to it. And then I feel pretty damn sure Pete, considering he's going to be coming on and sharing with us, I don't see why he would not speak to another SOG vet on here. So that'll be the first thing when we talk today, setting it up and testing, is broach that subject.
Don Fulton made a comment last week on his thing, which I think bears repeating for whoever's listening and whoever will listen later. Very rarely did the pilots, the Covey pilots, personally know the guys on the ground. And likewise, very rarely did the guys on the ground personally know the Covey pilot by name or even having met, because, they took off from the airport. We took off in the choppers and went to Dak To, and never the twain shall meet. I got to quit waving my hands in front of the camera.
It's fun.
Like Don not knowing who the hell I was, no big deal, because I didn't know who the hell he was, except I do have a story, and he may or may not remember it, but it's got to be him. I mean, how many Dons were there flying for us? When I got shot the first time, when I came back from Japan, they tried to send me to some leg infantry unit, and that ain't going to happen. So I did what any good SF guy would do, and I showed up at 5th Group, and the Sergeant Major took care of it. And I made my way to Pleiku on the milk run. And when I got to Pleiku, I went to the Air Force part where the pilots lived, and I ran into one of our facts, and his name was Don, and that's all I remember. I do not remember his last name. It may not have been Fulton. But anyway, he felt sorry for me, and he said, look, I'll take you to the O Club tonight, and we'll have a good steak dinner. And in the morning, I'll fly you up to Kontum when I go up there. So we went to the O Club and had a good steak dinner on him, and he flew me in his OV-10 Bronco up to Kontum the next morning. He let me fly it for a few minutes and dropped me off at the airport, and then somebody came from the FOB in a Jeep and picked me up and brought me back to camp. So was it Don Fulton? I can't say for sure. It was Don.
I also need to there's another guy that we desperately need to get on. Don't you know Alan Farrell? You know him well.
We were teammates, yeah.
Okay, great. I just emailed him, and he told me last week to call him anytime at night. And by night, I'm always worn out, but I'm going to make sure I can talk to him this week. And if that's who I've wanted to hook you up with, is get you and Alan together to talk about the yard camp and shit like that, because what he went through, and then also what you were doing is if y'all don't, I don't even have the book in here. If y'all got to get SOG or Joe Parnar's Kontum. Yeah. I mean, it is unbelievable. As a matter of fact, I got a few photos of Alan and Terry after the attack right here, and I was hoping.
Go ahead.
No, it's you go ahead.
Alan is probably one of the last people that I would have ever expected to make a career out of the Army and become a command sergeant major. When I found that out from Joe Parnar, it was like, really? Alan was a school teacher. And that's Alan on the right and Robert Gran on the left. In the pictures that I took when I got shot the first time, there's one with Gran in it. I don't think I have one with Alan in it. But I have the 8mm movies I had of Alan and myself and Wayne Anderson in my little blow-up swimming pool.
Also, your pictures of y'all on the beach when y'all went to CCN for a bit.
Yeah. What we haven't really dived into a lot is not the funny side, I guess, so much as me and Tony Love are going to take care of that.
He messaged me yesterday, as a matter of fact, about that.
You know, you work hard and you play hard. And we played hard. There's some stories that I can't tell, but we played extremely hard. And I was always impressed with Alan because he'd been a school teacher, and I'm thinking, school teacher, SOG guy, they don't quite seem to go together. And then he went to Bangkok one time on R&R, and he came back and he had this little leather pouch, and he opens it up and dumps it into his hand, and it was all these jewels, you know, like diamonds and rubies, and of course blue star sapphires. You got to have them. And he told me that somebody in his family, or maybe he said my family, were jewelers. So when he went to Bangkok, he bought all these goodies to take back to his jeweler relatives, you know, because you could buy them for next to nothing. I mean, hell, my war medallion was supposedly, it was 22 karat gold, and then the chain was 18 karat gold. $25 for the whole deal. So you could go to Bangkok and buy stuff, jewels, that kind of stuff for next to nothing. And there were 2 or 3 jewelry, whatever you want to call them, stores or outlets that the SF guys used primarily. I never made it to Bangkok. You know, I was lucky I made it to Japan, you know. But yeah, so Alan, I'm sure has got some interesting stories. But
not only that, but while he was speaking of him being and I've got the photos somewhere of the stuff that Joe Walker wanted him to paint specifically. And God, it makes me so mad I don't have it right here handy. But nonetheless, Joe got him. He could speak Latin and Greek and could write in Latin. And so anytime y'all see CC photos that I post or Terry has or whatever, and you see Latin on the walls or anything like that, I'll share a bunch of them. All of that is Alan Farrell. And as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, was he the headmaster at Virginia Military Institute?
He was.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if, I'm assuming that when he became a sergeant major, that was maybe his last duty assignment or something, to be the headmaster. But this kind of goes back to the same idea as us and the pilots never meeting face to face. Alan and I were on the same team. We went to the field together. We did all this stuff. We were at the same camp together for months and months and months. I never knew Alan had this artistic talent. You know, it's I don't know. It's just one of those things is you got to be friends with guys because you were on the same team, but a lot of times you didn't get reflect.
Yeah, it's a glare. Let me email that photo and I'll bring it up. Keep talking. I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
Did you get the picture I sent you of that flechette round?
Yes, and I'm about to bring that.
When I don't know who we'll do it with, which show that I'll be doing it with, but a crew chief, one of our helicopter crew chiefs, Bob Hall, when he passed away a few years ago, Bob had been working for years on putting together a cutaway of a 2.75-inch rocket filled with flechette rounds. And his son donated it to the Special Ops Association. And me and another guy went over and picked it up and brought it back. The only time it'll ever see the light of day is if you go to Vegas to the SOA reunion. But I got some good pictures of it. So I sent Bud one, and we've had discussions. There's been a lot of questions on some of the previous shows about these flechette rounds and like how many of the little darts were in one. And what I understand, the count was somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000.
2,200.
2,200. So you'll be able to see this cutaway and get a better idea of how this thing was packed with all these flechette rounds. I mean, it's just crazy. And then that takes away any wondering you may have had as far as how it just shredded everything in its path and killed everything in its path.
Here we go. I'm about to be bringing it up right now.
Yeah, we'll have to show it now because we're just kind of killing time to see if Glasshauser shows up. There you go. So that whole thing there is filled with 2,200 of these little steel darts.
About yay big.
Can you imagine? I mean,
I've got a few in the other room. I've shown them before, and it would take a minute to dig out. But they're literally, they look like throwing darts, but they are. I mean, you can bush hog and you could nail a person to a tree. I've heard recon men say they've seen people. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's been done. So I thought that was kind of an interesting picture to be able to show the guys on one of the shows, since we've talked about these flechette rounds so many times, and I dug that picture out, and it's pretty cool.
I've never actually seen one like that with a cutaway to where we could see just how slam packed they were. That's a really good photo. There you go, right here. All of this is, and he actually made it.
That was all feral?
Yes, sir. All of that is Bucky. Michael Buckland also liked to do Snoopy, and RT Main, he made a Snoopy with a T10 parachute and did something I forgot what he wrote in Latin above it, but all of this right here, this is Mr. Farrell's handiwork, and I can't make out the Latin because it's a little far, but I'll figure out what his favorite phrases are, because several of them have some really cool stuff on there. I thought that was interesting. Talented young man. Oh, wow. Irish, what, you're working on a painting for Joe Walker? What do you mean you're working on a Joe Walker painting? Because Joe's passed away, but I mean, I'm close with his son. I can get, if you're making one for him, I can get it to you. Or if you're just making one of Joe, I'd love to see that. That's amazing. Tony, God almighty, damn it. I'm about to bring up Tony. Terry, I did speak to Tony, what day is it? Monday, Friday night. And he said once after this week, because as you heard earlier, I've pretty much booked every day, pretty much. And probably, when do you leave for the reunion?
Tuesday of next week.
Yeah. Okay.
So it'll be the 19th, Tuesday the 19th through Sunday the 24th.
19th
through the 24th.
Through the 24th, Terry.
So I'll be celebrating my birthday on Saturday down there at the picnic at Fifth Group.
I'm writing that down. Terry's B-Day. Hopefully, we might can work something out and get a show going from there with everyone. But the last week of September, if you'd like, we can line up the funny show with the fun show with Tony, because he he said he's wide open schedule wise. He's literally got nothing going on. So.
Then go ahead and get it scheduled now. So we got a date and all that, and we'll want to get with Tony ahead of time and kind of plan out some of the stories.
We'll do we'll get on here each other and we'll talk about that. I'm gonna write it down right now. You get back, you said the 24th. I'm gonna mark us down. 24th. Yeah. I'm gonna mark us down just to have a placeholder. I'm gonna mark us down for either Monday or Tuesday to talk to you, and I'll message Tony right now and tell him be ready for the 25th and 26th for a test show to where we can figure out to tribute piece for him. Yes, I would love to see it, and if you'd love to get it to his son, let me know and I will get it to him. Chad wanted to know, can you tell us a little bit about yard chicks? How are they different besides the obvious?
Well, yes, I can. My experiences started the very first day I was at the yard camp. And I had a girlfriend, a yard girlfriend, the whole 18 months I was there. But I also had, a number of side chicks. Being young and handsome and baby blue eyes, they found that very
Had to
attractive.
beat them off with sticks.
Yeah, exactly. And, many were the days where 4 or 5 times a day I was savoring the delights of the girls. My girlfriend was one of our, what they called hooch maids, that did our laundry and all that. And she had been trained as a nurse by the French, by these French missionaries. And that was kind of interesting. So she wasn't just a mountain girl, She spoke very good English, but she was trained as a nurse. So, I think, Chad, we probably ought to leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Yeah. And especially with the wife maybe being in the house, that's probably not the best subject to be broaching right now.
Well, the wife is working down at Fort Leonard Wood.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it can. Yeah.
She knows. My wife and I, and you guys have figured out by now, I don't have any real secrets. It's all pretty much an open book. I mean, what the hell? Like our favorite expression back in the day was, what are they going to do? Send me to Vietnam? Well, nowadays, what are they going to do? Send an old man to Leavenworth? I'm not the least bit worried. There was no law against enjoying the local talent.
No, not at all. I mean, hell, that's what keeps you sane. I mean, hell, you're going to run out of blow a gasket. There's Farrell right there. Hell, I didn't even know he ran recon for a little bit.
You know what? I didn't know that either. Again, that just goes to show an interesting story with Farrell. So in December of '69, every month, we sent 2 Americans and a squad or a platoon of yards up to Leghorn to the radio relay site to man it. Because, that thing had to be manned because that was the team's main contact with anybody. And one of our lieutenants was, I won't mention his name because he's dead, but he was pissed off at me because I had a Montagnard girlfriend. So when it came time to send somebody to Leghorn, it was me that got picked to go away for a whole month. Yeah. Hi, Casey. So the night of December 17th, when the NVA decided to attack Leghorn, that first rocket that they fired, and one of these shows, we'll show the pictures of it, it blew out the whole side of the ammo bunker, but it didn't set off any ammo, and it cut the coax cable. So here we are in the pitch dark. The other American that was with me had malaria, so he was out of it completely. And I'm fumbling around in the dark trying to find, and I guess there's a name for it, the little whip antenna that you screwed onto the Prick 25, which is what you normally had on it when you were moving, because it was a little short, about a 2 foot, 2.5 foot. It looked like a piece of tape measure, metal tape measure. So I got on there and I couldn't raise anybody. And finally, and to this day, I don't understand why Alan was where he was at, but Alan was at Hickory. And Alan is the only one that I was able to raise, and he could just barely hear me. And thanks to Alan, he was able to get a hold of Moonbeam, the AC-130 with the General on it flying around, and they got over there above us. But had Alan not been able to hear me, I wasn't having any luck raising anybody. But I don't understand. I thought Hickory was always manned by CCN people.
Vern Ward and both that guy that put out Dawson's War.
Yeah.
His name's Ken Boyd. I don't
Right.
care if he knows or not. Everyone should know off our SOG group who wrote that book. It's Ken Boyd. He made it sound like Alan was at CCN for a period of time, because he makes a character on Alan running the is it S2, the Intel shop or whatever?
Yeah, right.
He mentions them, and also Vern mentions leaving Mylock and going to CCN for a period and running into Alan. So I've got to get my stuff straight with Alan. I thought he was exclusively CCN. I mean CCC.
Casey, I guess I'll answer that question in a minute. You know, again, this is one of them things like Vern. When I knew him at the yard camp, I didn't know that he had previously been at CCN and that he had taken 3 POWs at one time and all this. You know, I mean, I've got other stories about Vern that he might not want me to share, but this is the thing. A lot of the guys, Glasshauser. So when I knew him, he was a lieutenant, and I think he was my platoon leader. He was at the yard camp when I was there. But then he was recon and covey rider, and you tended after a while to lose track of a lot of people. You know, he was an officer and I wasn't. And so we didn't really, other than at the yard camp. Once we moved from the yard camp down to the main FOB, there's Goulet and Glasshopper. You know, you tended, the officers went to the officers club and the enlisted went to the enlisted club. And if you didn't run into them on the compound or something, you literally lost track of them.
Like you did with Glenn and all of them, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, Glenn and I went through training group together, and here we're at the same FOB, but he's in recon and I'm in Hatchet Force. And I had been there, 14 months before I ever even ran into him. And that was when they were getting off the chopper with him and Miller. When Miller got the Medal of Honor, they got off in the middle of our perimeter and then walked off the hill. And I'm like, yo, Pineapple. You know, we called him Pineapple because,
yeah,
you know,
Hawaiian.
Right. Yeah. And 14 months we're at the same camp, and I never knew he was there. David Gilmer. I got stories about me and David Gilmer in training group. Didn't know he was there. You know, and on and on and on like that. So I guess the right word would be that we were somewhat compartmented. Okay, I'm going to answer Casey's question the best that's David Gilmer.
Yep.
Isn't it?
Old Dave. Yep.
Oh, Dave.
Right before he picked up this POW right here.
And Dave was from Alabama. Yep.
Several of the big snatchers like Bob Howard and him.
Bob Howard.
Alabama boys.
I remember the end of March 68 in training group. It was payday weekend, and I flew home to get my car and bring it back to Bragg. And on the way back, I swung down way out of my way through Alabama and picked Gilmer up. And I think we got back to Bragg about 4 a.m, almost barely in time to make morning formation. Okay.
I'll highlight it for you.
So Casey's question, do we have anything to deter or otherwise help with all the communicable diseases? I don't know if I want to ask what is your definition of communicable diseases. There's a picture, and it's in Joe Parner's book of one of the Vietnamese nurses called Pocahontas.
I've got that one too.
Yeah. Every time I'd go get my shots for having the clap, because I wasn't very discretionary as far as my selection of partners. And the fifth time, I'll never forget, she's like, "You be here too much. You number 10 GI, you be here too much." And when she would give me the shots of penicillin, when she'd stick the needle in my ass, she'd twist it. Said, you remember this. You remember. Yes, ma'am. But malaria was very, very prevalent, obviously in a tropical climate like that. I've got a picture. It's in my directory that you've got my pictures called FOB2. There's a picture of me on a cot with an IV in me, and there's this four-star general sitting there talking to me. He was the commander-in-chief of the Pacific. I had malaria, and that's the only time that I actually remember positively that I had malaria. But if anybody made it through their tour without getting malaria, there she is. Yeah, buddy. She married one of our Americans. And but yeah, she, and again, she was Vietnamese, and all my girlfriends were yards. So that wasn't always the most popular thing.
She was at SOAR last year, and she still is a beautiful lady, and they've got a daughter, and her daughter is stunning, a beautiful young lady.
Yeah. So malaria, we had two different kinds of pills that we took. And even though you took them faithfully, which I did, they were called a prophylactic, just like a rubber, to prevent you, hopefully to prevent you, but it wasn't 100% guarantee. Just like a rubber ain't gonna 100% guaranteed. Another one was hepatitis. When we got ready, water.
Terry, your audio's messing up on you. There you go. You're good.
Oh, I know what this damn laptop that I have. It's the power cord. I had to buy it off of Amazon, and it won't stay in. So if I forget and take my finger off of holding it in, it fucks up. So we had hepatitis was an issue because you got dirty water. You got another one was dysentery.
Oh.
So I guess these are the kind of stories that opens the door to other funny stories. So when I came back from the hospital in Japan after I got shot the first time, and I'm getting ready to get shot the second time, we went to Cambodia. The only time that I ever went to Cambodia. Well, I had dysentery. So I took 3 bottles of kaopectate with me. I'm going to clog that sucker up. So we got to that hilltop where we ended up being surrounded on for 5 days, and we get dug in and all that. Well, it hit me. So I leave my rifle, my web gear and everything, and I go out. I ain't going to do it inside the perimeter. I'm outside the perimeter, maybe 50 to 75 feet. Got my pants down around my ankles, taking care of business, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. And that scared the living rest of it out of me, because I'm like, shit, they're firing at us from every direction except where I'm at. So I need to hurry up and get back in the perimeter. So I got back in the perimeter, and that's the last time I ever left the perimeter without my weapon. That's
not as bad as I'm blanking on the recon man's name, and he had taken some no poop pills and was expecting a stand down and was gonna, clear himself out and get good. But he immediately got tasked to go out with another team. And by the time they were out a night or two, and he absolutely had to go, and he went out alone and had his weapon, luckily, but fire started breaking out. He had already dumped, had his weapon. He was going to try and pivot on and hold himself up, and fell completely back.
Looks like you're getting a little pussy there.
Yeah, we've gotten the pussy around. Yeah. And he fell right back into his 4-day buildup of waste.
Yeah. I'm looking at I'm looking at all the comments, and I guess the thing is, if you can't do this stuff and not have a sense of humor about some of the crazy shit we did, what's the point? Obviously, I have no filter or anything. It's like, it is what it is. This is what we did. And I even look back on it now, I find a lot of these crazy things, I find them humorous. Every time I see my screen flash, it's because I forgot to take my finger off the damn power cord. I'm going to start using my new laptop because this thing drives me crazy. Okay. Other diseases or, sicknesses or whatever, those are the main ones.
Did y'all ever I got one for you. I know a few guys down in CCS concerning the water. What about Bengay fever? Did y'all ever get any bad cases of Bengay fever out there?
I never heard of it.
Okay, one of the CCS legendary men, he's private, so I can't blast him, but he was on a big mission to save Americans, and he ended up getting Bengay fever, and it liked to have killed him.
I know it's really potentially fatal, but I never even heard of it. So, hey, Casey, don't worry about it, dude. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I'm just trying to think of some more. We're hoping that Glasshauser is going to show up.
I don't think he is. I think we can make our own show out of this, and I'll just have to get him on the flip side. I don't know. We've got enough lined up anyways this week.
And I know I've said this before, but we tell the funny stories, we tell the blood and guts stories, but to me, I'm taking all this, no matter, this is my 13th time to be on here. I'm taking it all with a grain of salt. I'm very humbled, actually, that there's so much interest in what we all did, not just us guys on the ground, but our pilots. I sent Bud some CDs of 4 missions, and my understanding is that they were from CCS. One of the pilots had a cassette tape recorder, and he recorded extractions under fire, 4 different ones. And on one of them, you hear the klaxon horn going off, and that's because the chopper got shot down. But listening to those things, it gives you a real feeling for the stress and the emotions that are going on. Because them pilots, they could have easily waved off and said, hell, there's too much ground fire, I'm getting out of here. And
yeah, I mean, the ground, the 1-0, if you will, if that's, I'm pretty sure it was a Omega CCS team, and you can hear him. I mean, he's fairly calm, but he says, if you don't come and get us this time, we're done. And that's when you start hearing the horn, because they've gone in and they're getting them out. And you hear rounds going off in the chopper.
And you gotta remember too that when these choppers get shot down, number one, the choppers are there because you got a team that's in deep shit to start with. Number two, you lose an aircraft. Well, there's 4 more guys on the ground that need to be rescued. And, you know, that's when all hell breaks loose up in the air, because you're going to get every aircraft in Southeast Asia, if necessary, to get in there and lay down cover fire so we can try to get either a bright light team or the team that's already on the ground to connect up with these air crews, because they may get up in the air and then go down, you know, a click away or something. Well, you can't leave them guys out there. They've risked their lives to save us, and you know, we're going to do whatever we can do to save them.
Speaking of you know, the bright lights and everybody trying to get everybody out and everything, I've noticed CCN is or all that I've heard, CCN is the only ones that ever got Jolly Greens. Did you ever get a chance to get Jolly Green help and rescues?
No. I remember one mission, and I don't remember the specifics, but I remember we got put in, the whole company got put in on a Jolly Green. It's the only time in my 18 months that I ever even saw a Jolly Green being used.
Wow.
That doesn't mean they weren't, but it's the only time I ever saw one. And there was a reason why we went in on the Jolly Green. You know, I think it might have been that BDA when I brought home the NVA canteen and all that, which we showed on one of the other episodes. We just didn't use them. We used a combination for insertions and extractions. We used a combination of Hueys and King Bees. You had Charlie model gunships and Cobras, 2 of each. And then, of course, you had the A1s, what we called the SPADs, the old propeller-driven planes, because those guys could stay on station for 4 hours. And so I'm trying to read some of the comments here.
Thanking Jason and you. And
the other thing to keep in mind with the Jolly Greens is you gotta think about the terrain. Usually when we get put in, the LZ might be just barely big enough for a Huey to set down in, you know. And
that was another thing. Were y'all, I know y'all use King Bees a lot, especially CCC in your time period, but did it get to a point for the hatchet force operations to where y'all did away with the King Bees and used exclusive slicks to be inserted?
It really depended on the mission and how many guys were going in. Because let's face it, we can only get 5 or 6 guys on a Huey. You only get 5 or 6 guys on a King Bee. But if we're putting in a whole company, you don't want to spend all day shuttling back and forth. You want to get as many guys on the ground at one time as you can. So we would use a mix of the Hueys and the King Bees.
Wow.
I remember one mission, and again, I don't remember the specifics of the mission. All I remember is we were sitting up at Dock Toe waiting to go in. And this is the only, if you want to call it, bad thing that I'll ever say about our American choppers. The Huey pilots refused to put us in. They said the weather was too bad, blah, blah, blah. And we're all standing out there on the tarmac arguing with them. We need to get in now before it gets too late, you know. And the King Bee pilots overheard the conversation, and they heard it getting kind of heated. Next thing you know, the one King Bee pilot comes up and he says, "We go now. We take you." So we started loading on King Bees, and we kind of overloaded them. But the King Bees took us in, and when the American pilots saw that the King Bees were taking us in, I guess they felt guilty and
shamed them out.
All of a sudden, the Hueys are ready to go. Let's go, guys, load up. But the King Bees led the way, and I gotta tell that to me it's hilarious. But you had to see it in person to appreciate it. The way the King Bees would go into these LZs, which again, a lot of times the LZ probably wasn't any bigger than some people's front yards, right? Okay, so the king bee goes up, they go up, and all of a sudden they turn completely on their side and they make a nosedive and then flare out at the last second into the LZ. I don't know that a Huey could even do that, but the king bees did it all the time. And I remember at the FOB back at Khartoum, the king bees had a habit of letting some of the recon guys learn how to fly the choppers. And I was watching when this happened, but one of the recon guys decided he was going to do that up and flip over on its side and make a nosedive for the whatever you want to call it, the landing. And he almost wrecked the chopper. And the colonel found out, and that caused a big stink, and that kind of officially put an end to the flying lessons. But you had to be on one of those king bees because, you think about inertia and all that. And the very first time that you're on a king bee, when it does that flip over and makes the nosedive, you'd swear you're going to fall out. Because there's always going to be one of us that's sitting with our legs over the side. So you're already half out of the chopper anyway. And that's what happened to me the first time that happened. Oh my God. I just knew I was going to fall out, but you don't, because the centrifugal force holds you in. But yeah, those guys. And what's interesting about it, we all know how Vietnam ended up. After we left, the Vietnamese army just kind of had no stomach for fighting or anything. The Vietnamese, the king bee pilots they came from the upper class of the Vietnamese society. They went to the military academies and the training and all that. But when it comes down to whatever you want to call it, willingness to fight, I guess would be the term. Those guys were fearless. And every recon guy or hatchet force guy that ever dealt with the king bees will tell you that same thing. Those guys were fearless. They had no hesitation. They would go where no other man would go. But then you got the other half of the coin, the regular ARVN army. And I'm sure that there were some of them. I never met one, but I'm sure there must have been a few anyway that had a spine. For the most part, when the shooting starts, they'd turn around, throw their guns down and run. During 69, this big deal was what they called Vietnamization, which was we're supposed to be training the Vietnamese military to take over so we can get the hell out of there and go home. So I think on the recon teams too, but on hatchet force, we would always have to take one or two Vietnamese with us. Usually they didn't come home. Now, the Yards hated the Vietnamese hated the Yards. That's all I'll say. You can draw your own conclusions to what might have happened. But when you're in a heavy firefight, who the hell knows? Who knows where the bullets are coming from? But that's, it was the culture that you're dealing with. And it was a very poor idea in the first place to try to mix Vietnamese and Montagnards together in a combat situation. It wasn't a good idea. And the Vietnamese guys weren't always there willingly, but they were told, you got to go, blah, blah, blah. Let's see.
We get this one asked a lot, and folks don't. I guess they aren't as in tune with and Jason Hardy photos and all that and the history. But many folks don't think there were many black SOG men, which is
Well,
not to say there weren't a lot, but there were a good number of SOG men,
yeah,
black SOG men.
I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Aleem. There were a number of black sock guys. Numbers in relation to, like, say it where I was at CCC. There may have been 10 out of maybe 150 guys. There might have been 10, there might have been 15, I don't know. Because like I was saying early, we were so compartmentalized. Hell, I didn't know most of the guys in recon, nor did
Some
they
were in
know.
recon, and you actually CCC actually had a few black officers there for a while
Yeah.
running.
And I know that Willie McLeod was one.
Oh yeah,
Joe
Ben
Cool.
Thompson.
I know that on my first mission, it was a SLAM mission, so we had both companies out together, and I know that there was one black NCO in a company, which was from the FOB, and I was at the yard camp. We didn't have any blacks at the yard camp that I can remember, but again, down at the FOB, there were. So as far as them being alive, Bud's probably more tuned into that than me, because I have not done a good job of staying in touch with anybody until just the last few years. And really, thanks to Bud, I've been in contact, like with Vernon Ward, who was with me when I got shot the first time. Hadn't seen him in 53 years. And last year in September, we met up at the 5th group reunion down at Fort Campbell.
And I mean, you got Ben Thompson, who was John Placer's first 1-0. You got Val Scribner with Mike Shepard at Montana. You've got Lawrence Nixon with Ed Walkoff at RT New York. There were several good black recon men. Willie McLeod, like you mentioned earlier. There's several. Jack Frost. I forgot his name, but his nickname was Jack Frost. He was a Mike Force veteran and a SOG recon man at CCC. So there's like Terry said, there's not a huge number compared, but there were quite a good number of excellent recon men, African American recon men.
Rick B asked a question a little while ago. I didn't even see it.
Yes, Melvin Hill too. He absolute
Melvin
fucking
Hill.
legend.
I knew him. Okay, Rick, I have a question about the FAC. When they got your position, did they mark it on a paper map? They did not have electronics on the OV-10. No, they had a paper map, and a lot of times they covered it with plastic, kind of like, I guess it was like contact paper, like you'd put on a shelf, but clear. Mm-hmm. And they could mark on it with a grease pencil or whatever. A lot of times, like for gunnery, for targeting, they'd make a cross or whatever on the windshield of the plane. And so they knew whatever they want to hit with their rockets, they line it up with that rocket. But as far as marking our position, the closest thing you could say to marking our position would be when they're bringing in air support, and they'd fire the Willie Pete rounds to mark where to put the bombs or the napalm or, whatever. Of course, they couldn't put those on top of us, but they would say, okay, I'm going to mark, and you'll be 100 meters, 90 degrees from the team or whatever.
100 meters from the smoke northwest, and stuff like that. Yeah. The perfect thing you need to listen to is under live, Rick, on this page. I don't know if you're new or if you've subscribed or not, but go under live, and we've had a recent CCC FAC, Don Fulton, who we're trying to get Terry hooked up with, and a Marine Army FAC who worked with the Marines, and they go into great detail on what it was like with this rudimentary targeting system and marking targets and such. But Terry's dead on. They did not have electronics. Grease pencils were as high technology as they had in those birds at that time.
Okay. This damn computer's driving me nuts with the blinking. I'm trying to scroll down to see if there's any more questions that we haven't really answered.
Jason has one here. Were you ever part of training the indigenous to use grenades?
Oh, hell yes. Bud, can you in my pictures go in the directory that's called Yard Camp, and you'll find a picture of me throwing a grenade, but it was during grenade training with the yards down at the range, which was down behind the Yard Camp. The yards, they didn't understand baseball, so therefore they didn't understand the concept of throwing grenades. And I know my one incident, but some of the other guys the recon guys that would take their yards to the range there at the Yard Camp, they'll tell the same story. The yards, they'd go back to throw the grenade, and either the grenade would fall out of their hand, or when they'd go to throw it, it would be like a sissy throw, and the grenade would go out 10 or 15 yards, and you're within kill range. So if you can find that picture, you'll see there's a big berm, and we would actually get up on the side of the berm. Yeah. So there you go. You see the way the yards are in position, the way their arm, it's hard to see, but the way their arm is, we'd get close to the top of that berm so that when they'd throw, at least the grenade had a better than no chance of going over the berm. So if it was short, at least when it went off, it wouldn't kill us,
We had Andy on Finlayson, who ran a Force Recon team, and he mentioned teaching them lobbing instead of, because no baseball players, much like the Brits, can't throw a grenade very well. Now they can, but they'd quickly learn to lob because they had some real close calls, like Jason said.
Yeah, and I did the same thing. If you're in close contact, and when I say close contact, if you're within 30 or 40 meters of these guys, sometimes throwing the grenade overhanded, you got to really think hard about how hard you're throwing, because you don't want it to go too far, but you want it to go far enough. But if you lob it underhand, especially when there's hundreds of them coming at you in waves, if you toss it underhanded, you could toss it 15, 20 yards out there and let it do what it's supposed to do. So, yeah, I like the underhand, but I had a bad experience throwing it overhand too when I got shot that first time, because I threw the grenade at the guy. I threw it up and it hit the bamboo and bounced back and went off over us, and we got showered with shrapnel. Nobody got hurt, thank God. But, whereas if I would have pitched it underhand, it would have rolled into the bamboo and gone off and maybe got him. So, yeah, the yards, I mean, let's face it, these are people that grew up hunting with crossbows and, chopping sugar cane and manioc and stuff. And all of a sudden we've got them with these modern weapons and stuff. And sometimes it was a challenge for them to, get the hang of it. And grenades was probably the most glaring example of that, Okay, we've learned about the boxing matches. There's ever not that I'm aware of, Jason. We always pretty much controlled ourselves. I mean, there were personality conflicts. I went in the club one day and there was an E7, and to this day I don't know his name. I didn't care what his name was, but he decided for whatever reason to pick a fight with me, and I'd always let the other guy throw the first punch. So then when he found himself on the floor of the club with me on him with a headlock and choking the shit out of him, that was the end of the story. But for the most part, I wasn't aware of Americans having fights with each other.
There were fist fights every now and again. Mike Shepard, to put it out there, he tuned a few men up for treating his yards and yards on the compound wrong. He would notoriously fire your ass up for treating the yards disrespectfully. And as a matter of fact, everyone knows. I'll go ahead and say it. He's dead, and he from all accounts, he was a prick. He beat the shit out of Charles Baylor when he got home and found out he had beaten and fired a few of the Montana yards while he was gone, and he came back and tore his ass and just tore him up.
And well, he should have. I don't think you're going to find. I'm going to say anybody of our Americans, but that may be overextending it a little bit. But we love the yards because, I mean, think about it. You're out in the woods. Your ass depends on those yards being able to hold their own. Now, if you got a yard that can't hold his own, just like an American that goes out there and goes catatonic when the shit starts, that yard, when you get back, that yard's gone. And the yards would take care of that themselves.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if it's us and yards or all an American unit or whatever. If you got somebody that you can't depend on when the shit gets heavy, they need to be gone. And there's plenty of examples, not only yards, but Americans who, as soon as they got back, they were on the next chopper out, never to be heard from again.
Fred Zapotowski, as a matter of fact, has a few on both yards and Americans not cutting it, and him firing the whole damn team and starting over because there was no trust whatsoever.
Exactly. And just like, and I guess I'll use Alan Farrell as the example just because we were on the same team and we were out to the woods together. But let's say you get in deep doo-doo and the other American just is not, it's like they don't know what to do or whatever. I ain't going back out with them again, because I'd like to come home, and I think almost all the Americans are going to tell you that same story, that you have to implicitly trust your other Americans, but you got to be able to trust your yards too. And on the other side of the coin, the yards were quick to pick up on an American who was less than what he should be. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but I know one American. I don't know how he even made it through training group because he was overweight. But I went to the field with him a couple of times, and there's not enough money in the world to make me ever want to go to the field with him again. I just had no confidence in him. So, I mean, just because you could make it through training group and get that green beret and think you're the baddest mother on the planet, it's the same in today's military. I don't think anybody has ever come up with a way of predicting a guy's behavior once the chips are down and the shooting starts. You can psychoanalyze him. You can train and train and train and train. But there's no way to accurately predict. I mean, look at all these SF guys in today's world that are coming back and got PTSD and they're killing their wives and they're doing all this shit. Well, you can't protect it. Hi, Mom.
Yeah.
Is that Mom?
Yeah, she's
there's just, I don't think there's a good way of predicting it. So I know one thing that I always talking.
There you go. It's back now.
Yeah, well, this shit sucks. I got a brand new laptop and I keep using the old one. And it's the one that's got the power cord problem. Okay. Okay, how's that?
Good. Loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm talking on the microphone that's on my headphones. Okay, let's see. Okay. Do you have anyone during your time die from anything non-combat? Yes. For instance, on Doug Miller's recon team, Chuck Hine had a white phosphorus grenade, and whatever happened, I don't know the entire story, but he dropped it on a concrete floor and it cracked it and it went off. Well, white phosphorus, you ain't going to survive. I'm sorry.
He grabbed it and ran out the door to save everybody.
Save everybody else. And of course it killed him. When I got shot the first time, of course they pulled me and the lieutenant who was deceased. They pulled us out, but the rest of the company stayed in overnight, and they got, they're setting up blocking the damn Ho Chi Minh Trail because we're in a truck park. And they got hit really hard that night. And Vernon has shared a lot of that with me about what all, I was listening on the radio back at the FOB because they weren't going to ship me off to the hospital till the next morning. So I listened in. And one of the guys was an E7 named John Holan. And I heard over the radio that he took a sucking chest wound from some shrapnel. So 2 days later, I'm down there in the hospital, and they've taken the bullet out and bandaged me up and said, you're going to Japan to get sewn up and all that crap. And John Holan shows up at my bedside. Now, this is a guy that had a sucking chest wound from shrapnel. And here he's at my bedside asking how I'm doing when I just got a damn bullet in my ankle. Not a big deal. But I just thought it was a really class act. Well, I go to Japan for a month, and I come back, and John is not there anymore. And it's like, I don't know what happened to him, and I never did hear. Well, then probably 15 years ago or so, there was a guy named, let's see, what was his name? Robert No. And he had a website, and it listed all the casualties from SOG. And under Holan's name, it has a date of death about 4 or 5 days after all this happened. And it shows died non-hostile causes. And I've never been able to get anybody to tell me. And then apparently that website was taken down or whatever. And I've never been able to find anything since then that provided any information on John. So
I think no site is still up. I use it occasionally.
Do you?
Uh-huh.
The one that lists. I can't find it then.
I'll send you the link. Okay. I'll send you the link. Yeah.
And I guess there's two No's. There's a Robert No and there's a Frank No.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if one is a son of the other or if they were both.
I think they may be related, but I think Frank died in 67 with an A team, CIDG camp being overrun. And then Robert was SOG.
Okay.
I'm not sure as to relations, but I get mixed up on that occasionally. But I know Robert's website, I still use it.
And there's other guys who were killed or died, I'll say. Accidents. Vehicle accidents. A Jeep rolls over and kills somebody, that kind of stuff. So there were a number of guys who died from what they call non-hostile causes.
Just freak accidents, literally. A car coming too fast over the bridge in Khartoum and them having to swerve and it rolling and literally only killing one person out of the 4 or 5 and just crazy stuff like that.
That's luck of the draw, When your time's up, it's up. I don't care what you do.
Absolutely.
But this damn thing's driving me crazy. I'm trying to scroll down to see the new comments, and it says new comments with an arrow pointing down, but when I touch it, it doesn't do anything. I'm going to throw this sumbitch away when we get done. I don't think we've heard any scrounging stories. Yeah, okay, you want scrounging stories. So everybody in Special Forces in Vietnam, not just SOG, but everybody in Special Forces, the Army decided that because our job was to live with the populace and win the minds and hearts of the people, they didn't provide us with food. Of course, we had C rations that you could take to the field, but as far as day-to-day meals, every camp had a club, and we had cooks and all that. But where did the food come from? Well, the Army paid us $77.10 a month for what they called rations not available. So we're supposed to use that to live on, $77 a month. Well, if you're a big old boy with an appetite, that ain't going to go very far. So I was at the yard camp. I was like the chief scrounger, as well as the chief procurement officer for the girls. But that's another story.
That's a good one.
One day we took a 2.5, a 2.5 ton truck and a 3/4 ton truck, like a Army version of a pickup. And we went down to Pleiku, where all the helicopters and the air crews were at, and all that. Because we knew that the Air Force and the Army pilot guys ate pretty good. So we went in this one mess hall, and I'll be damned if the mess sergeant in there had not been my mess sergeant back in the States before I even got in Special Forces.
Wow.
So we get to talking, and I said, okay, we're scrounging. He said, well, what do you want? And I said, I want whatever food I can get. And he said, here's my problem. I have X number of people assigned to my mess hall. I am required to draw rations for that number of people. He said, well, for instance, the officers, they never eat in my mess hall because they eat over at the officers club and they're over there eating steak while we're eating shit on a shingle, And he said, I have all this food left over and I end up literally, I'm not allowed to give it to the local populace. I literally have to throw this shit away. I said, what do you want in return? He said, well, I'd like to decorate my mess hall or redecorate it. And he said, it'd be nice to have some NVA shit, and Montagnard crossbows and whatever. Done deal, boss. We brought that 2.5 and that 3/4 ton filled to the gills with fresh fruit, which, hell, we never saw fresh fruit. They had the big cardboard tubs like at Baskin-Robbins of ice cream. Mm. We had ice cream that they put in trash bags and packed it in ice for us. So that night we had ice cream back at the camp. So I started going down there, And we got back to camp, so we go down to town, and we had the lady at the seamstress shop make us up some North Vietnamese flags. We took them out on the range and put bullet holes in them and scorched them over a fire and all that to make them look really combat worn. We had the yards make us got some of their knives, homemade knives, had us make some crossbows, some pipes, all that kind of shit. So it was a fair trade back and forth. Another scrounging story, when I first got there, and of course I didn't know shit when I first got there, right down the road from us, between the yard camp and the FOB, which was about 3 to 4 miles, I guess. In between was Firebase Mary Lou, which is a 4th Infantry Division artillery base, and it was a supply point. So I was told to go along with whoever I went with. I don't even remember. So we go down there, and the guy that's in charge of this distribution center, I call it, like kind of like the Walmart distribution center today. We go down there, and there was an exchange of something, and we load the truck up with food, good food. A couple of months later, we get word, and it's documented. I've read stories on the internet about it. They got busted for black market sales of food and other equipment and stuff. And they ended up going to Leavenworth.
Ooh.
So the guy that we were paying off for food, yeah, he went to Leavenworth. Steak and lobster. I never had lobster before. So the guys in Da Nang at CCN, they had it made because, you know, right there, the Navy ships were all docked, and you got all these admirals and whatever their rank names are, commodores or admirals and shit. And those guys are eating steak and lobster every night, probably 2 or 3 times a day. Well, building materials. Where do you think we got all our tin for the roofs on the buildings or the sides of the buildings, the plywood, all that kind of stuff? And that's where choppers come in. So you go up there, you go to CCN, and then you get down there on the docks, and, you know, let's face it, these Navy guys are never going to see a bad guy, you know. So you trade them an NBA flag and maybe an AK that's damaged and not in firing condition because they couldn't take it home with them anyway. Souvenirs that they could go home and tell lies about how they acquired them. So you trade this stuff, and you could go out of there with I used to have a picture, and it was one of my color pictures that the color went real bad on, and I just didn't burn it to CD then. But I got a picture of a king bee lifting up a whole like pallet load of 4x8 sheets of plywood. That's how you did it. It was a trade. You know?
It's like in the famous Green Beret movie by John Wayne.
Exactly. Everything is available for a price. I don't care what it is. Anything can be bought. It's just a matter of what does the person want in return. And so, yeah, scrounging was scrounging.
I wish we could get Mr. Terry Sorsby. He's passed away, but God almighty, would that be an interesting man to talk about his scrounging abilities. Oof. Jason says, I've talked with some connections who live in Vietnam about Terry's pipe from, I think, the first or second interview that y'all did. They said Terry must have been very, very respected to receive such a gift.
Well, here's the deal. I loved my yard so much, and I thought it was so important for them to understand the commands that we might give out in the field. And to this day, I still have the sheets of paper, but my interpreter and I, and some of the yards in the evenings, they'd come to my room, and I was making like a dictionary of the different yard dialects and what a word would mean, like, say, fire to the right, enemy to the left, whatever. And I was making this dictionary of words because I wanted to understand. And then, when you're downtime, you might have a week of downtime in between a mission. It might even be more than a week. And I didn't always go to Saigon to party and drink. Yeah, I did quite a bit, but that's another story. But I would go down into the village, and one Sunday, the yards and we would go up in the mountains outside of the camp and shoot monkeys and come back and have a feast in the village. And the one Sunday, I made the mistake of drinking the village chief under the table with rice wine. So from then on, I was in demand on Sundays. If we weren't out in the field, I was in demand down in the village to see if the village chief could outdrink me. But I developed, and of course, having the Montagnard girlfriends didn't hurt either. So I had this relationship with the yards. A lot of guys never chose to develop those kind of relationships, but I thought it was really important because these are the guys that are covering my ass when we're out in the field. And so it became like a brotherhood almost, And when I see what happened to the yards after we pulled out of Vietnam, it's just disgusting. The average yard fighter for us was making more than a South Vietnamese Army lieutenant. So that's how much we cared for our yards.
Yeah. And y'all damn sure. I mean, even, it's a shame, like you said, of what happened, but there's always those stories, even though they were set up for defeat, but at least y'all were letting, and I know CCN and CCC were doing, guys, Howard Sugar spoke in detail about it, to where they were getting rumors about stuff being shut down, teams being sent away, and they started, after every training mission or what have you, collecting extra rounds, weapons, grenades, and all of that. And they would finally got to where they were told to send them home, and they loaded up 3 or 4 foot lockers full of weapons, ammo, and all of that. And, but still, that's no way to leave. The politicians absolutely screwed them.
You know what happened in Afghanistan with leaving all that equipment behind? If anybody thinks that we didn't do the best we could to take care of our yards before we left, they're delusional because, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned some some tales about some exclusive caches that the recon men put back. And I'm sure some of the hatchet force men sent off as well. I mean, underground, just caverns of AKs, CAR 15s, M1s, ammo, claymores. I mean, it's nice to see the guys potentially risking getting in trouble, giving government issued weapons to the yards to at least be able to somewhat defend themselves.
And when you wear glasses and you got to wipe the lens off and you got headphones on, I mean, anybody that up in the higher ranks than that maybe they had no clue what we were doing. But these are people that you really, over a period of time, developed a kinship with, a feeling with, and you're going to do whatever you can do to do the best you can to take care of them. So at the end of my first year, a tour, when you first go over there, is 13 months. Then if you extended, that meant you were signing up that, okay, I get to go home for 30 days, paid leave. I can go anywhere in the world I want. The Army's going to pay for it. Go home for 30 days. Then I come back to Vietnam for another 6 months. Before that tour is over, you put in for another 6 months. You go home for 30 days or go somewhere, and then you come back. So at the end of my first year, my yards didn't understand extension leave and all this stuff. They thought, well, you're leaving, so you're never coming back. So we had a big party down in the village, and they gave me this pipe. Now, I'm donating the pipe next week to 5th Group for their museum down there at 5th Group at Fort Campbell, with the condition that it's on display and it's not stuck away in a storeroom somewhere. You know, the bracelets, any American that didn't have a bunch of bracelets probably was a rear echelon dude, unless he bought some down in the village, you know. But the bracelets, again, were a sign of respect and friendship. And then I had, and I don't know if I still have it out in the workshop. I need to see if it's out there. I don't know. A few years ago, I kind of regret it now, but I sold a bunch of my stuff to a collector. But it is what it is. But I had this little, my girlfriend gave me, and it was yellow and red string, which are the colors of Vietnam, the red and yellow string. And there was this little square, it was about 1.5 inch square of red cloth with some hand-drawn stuff on it. And you could tell that inside it was sewn up. It was paper. It was probably pages out of a magazine that had been folded up just to give that thing some body. And she gave that to me and told me if I wear it to the field, I'll never die. And by God, I wear it to the field, and yeah, I got shot 3 times, and I got shot down in a helicopter, but I never died. And I kept that thing all these years. So I think I still have it out in the workshop. If I do, I'll show it on a future show, but I'm not for sure.
I'm going to end up having to cut loose here because it looks like Greg's trying to finally contact me.
Okay.
Let me let's end for today real quick for the little morning update we did, and let me see if Greg's going to end up. I'm sure he's going to postpone. So I'll touch base with you after I find out what the heck, and I'll let all of y'all know about Greg and what's
if Greg's going to be on, I'm going to be listening in.
Okay.
What are you going to do? Post it?
I've just delayed the time because it would have already gone live and messed everything up. So as soon as I find out, I'll fix the date and I'll contact you and let you know if it's going on today or if we're going to have to move it back. So give me about 30 minutes or so and I'll get back with you.
Okay, guys, as always, thanks for joining us.
Yep. And
see you next time.
Be looking for Terry because we're going to have him with Tony on when he gets back from the 5th Group reunion, and we're going to try and finally get some pilots hooked up with the ground guys. So we got some good shit to look forward to.
Great.
But Terry, I'll be in touch with you here in about 30 minutes. Guys, it was great seeing y'all this morning. Y'all be good. See you, Mr. Terry. See ya. All right, guys, I will be in touch as soon as I find out what the heck is going on with Greg. I appreciate all of y'all. Jason, so glad. White's SP44, great to see you, man. Anthony, glad you finally got to get in. I hope you can watch the rest of the show. Alex, love having you in here with us. Rob, great to see you, brother. Always a pleasure to have you. I know Sean was in here with us. Daniel, always good to see you, brother. Casey, I'm glad you finally got to catch us. I hope the algorithm is working. John, great to see you again as usual, brother. You're always in here with us. Y'all have a great day. Keep an eye out, Chad. You too, brother. I'll let you know as soon as I find out what's up with Greg. If not, just look forward because we've got SPAF pilot I'll be testing with today. Tomorrow we've got a test, and Wednesday we have 2 shows. We've got a PRU CIA show and a CCN Recon man, and then a SPAF pilot Thursday and a CCN Hatchet Force man on Saturday. I don't know why that's showing. I meant on Friday. So I'll keep you all updated. Y'all just bear with me. Great morning. At least we got to have Terry, even though stuff got messed up. So thanks for joining in with us. I'll be in touch with y'all here directly. See ya.